let's get to the Epstein story. Man, I've been wanting to cover this for a while. It is so crazy. Credit to Mortaza and Ryan over at Dropsite for reporting it. Let's put this up here on the screen. So I'm going to read pretty extensively from this because it's one of the best pieces of evidence that we have right now about Epstein's actual involvement in explicitly brokering Israeli security agreements. So what they write here is that Epstein, quote, used his political network and financial resources to help broker a security cooperation agreement between the governments of Israel and Mongolia, according to a trove of leaked emails from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. The new set of emails between Barak and Epstein has largely been ignored by the mainstream press, but it includes crucial new context on Epstein's operation. Well known that Epstein had personal ties to Israel, including Barak and Ehud Omer, but now what these emails show that were released by a pro-Palestinian hacking group with ties to Iran, they say it shows extensive emails from 2013 to 2016, intimate, often daily correspondence between Barak and Epstein. Their conversations address political and business strategy as Epstein coordinated meetings for Barak with other members of his elite circles. The article is the first in a series that will explore his work on behalf of Israeli military interests, particularly as it relates to his role in the development of Israel's cyber warfare industry. The rise of Israeli cyber surveillance and weapons industry is explicitly linked to much of the Epstein investments, which he helped broker for Ehud Barak, but potentially what they see here is the most explicit use of actual intervention for state power and in terms of the security agreement with Mongolia. And so I know it sounds a little bit crazy, like how exactly did it all come about, but what it basically gets to is that Epstein was this critical node of power. And this is what we focused on for quite some time. What the emails show is that Barak, even after he's out of office and he's staying at the Epstein mansion while having a mask on his face, walking in there, photographed by the New York Post, and while he's receiving this money from Epstein for his military intelligence, investments, and why he also is getting paid some, $2 million by the Leslie Wexner Foundation for 2 reports, one of which he never finished, which was controlled by Jeffrey Epstein, who is the chairman of said foundation. While he's doing all of this in the background, he is here setting up these daily correspondence and meetings for Barak. Keep in mind, this is all after Epstein is a registered sex offender. 2000, remember the timeline? 2013 to 2016, and leading eventually to some sort of Israeli security cooperation agreement in the future. Now, let's be clear as well. This does not say he was explicitly an Israeli agent. And I've never actually even said that. What I have said is that he was a very useful individual to people in power and intelligence networks. Probably the Mossad, Saudi Arabia, Russia, KGB, or whatever, the FSB, CIA, all of these people. But, it was when he got in trouble for some of his proclivities that's when those apparatuses kind of kicked into gear, and it's been explicitly denied now at the highest level by, the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett. Now the head of Mossad, who was recently on Barry Weiss's show, said, oh, absolutely, he's never worked for Mossad, never worked for Mossad. Remember, not worked with Mossad. Those are very different things that you could lay out there. They can come out and deny that too. Would you believe it from the CIA if they said something like that? So anyway, very important piece of evidence in all of this. Of course, it's been completely ignored by most of the mainstream media on this, probably because of this pro-Palestinian hacking group. Who cares where the information comes from?
Of course.
Emails are emails, all right? By the way, Iran, if you're listening, send it over. Okay, all right? I'll take it from anybody. As long as it's real, I don't care.
Yeah.
And anyway, so another piece in the puzzle that we can just put right there. We don't have all the other pieces, but the picture is all starting to come together.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty extraordinary, right? And we knew that relationship that he had with the former Israeli president. It was very close. They were together all the time. You've got the famous photo of him going into the mansion, all masked up. We knew they did business together, and this just sort of puts flesh on the bone of what that relationship looked like. And it reminded me quite a bit of also the way that Epstein ingratiated himself with J.P. Morgan.
Yes.
Because it was the same, he was seen as this real power broker where he was bringing business to them and creating meetings for them. And then he had this network of wealthy and powerful individuals that he was providing benefit to them also by bringing them into these meetings with the bank. And so when the shit hits the fan and he's a registered sex offender and they have to decide what they're going to do, there are a lot of people there who also, some of the executives are directly in his circle and going to the island as well. Yeah. They're, oh no, but he's so good for us business-wise. And by the way, since he has all of these powerful connections, like if they're okay with, if the former prime minister of Israel is okay with him, like who are we to judge?
Exactly.
So this is part of how, this really shines a light on how he was able to operate with such total and complete impunity in the way that he was in the highest circles of global power, both here in Israel and other places as well. So there's another story that's very worth keeping an eye on this week as well. You can put D2 up on the screen, which is Supreme Court this week is considering whether they are going to take up the Ghislaine Maxwell challenge to her, to her one count of her criminal convictions for sex trafficking. And basically her argument is, hey, that sweetheart deal that was cut by Alex Acosta back in Florida that said not only is this is it for Epstein, but also for his co-conspirators, named and unnamed, that applies to me. So you shouldn't have been able to indict and try me on this charge. And that appeal has now gone all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they face a decision whether or not to consider that appeal. The Department of Justice's position is no, you shouldn't take it up because there's all kinds of other stuff going on. So we don't want you to look at this right now. So we're waiting to see what the Supreme Court is ultimately going to do with it. But it really exposes how just disgusting that original deal and illegal, by the way, too, was found to have violated the victim's rights. That original sweetheart deal, that it could even absolve Ghislaine Maxwell, who was so complicit in all of the horrors and crimes that were committed by Jeffrey Epstein.
We would hope that it doesn't go through, but with this, you have no idea. In some ways, and this is going to sound insane, but there is a legal argument to be made, as horrible as the deal was, right? Her argument is basically, hey, you gave me a printed document from the United States government, United States of America, that said, I will not prosecute you and you're good to go. If Epstein go ahead and pleads guilty or whatever to this very narrow set of charges, which is the greatest sweetheart deal. She's like, you can't just go back on your word because some judge in 2018 said it was illegal, only because you didn't follow best practices. We held up our end of the bargain. If it's the government's fault for making the wrong deal. And that's that's part of the most insane part about the 07 deal, really, in the first place. And part of why, in my estimation, is one of the clearest evidences of immense government power or some force behind the scenes doing something to protect him. But it does also demonstrate that for Trump and with Maxwell, there are various different avenues which they're trying to have a release valve, because they had her sit down with the Deputy Attorney General. They made sure that she got all of her BS denials out in the open. By the way, I've already demonstrated many of the explicit lies that she said in that transcript. Not that Todd Blanche did anything to push back against them, but the point remains that for Maxwell herself, what we see is that she's scheming for two things, both to get the Supreme Court to try to let her out. I don't think that's going to happen, but it is certainly possible, though. I just wouldn't necessarily bet on it. The other is a pardon. She's already got the sweetheart. She's transferred to this federal prison camp in some sort of great, club fed or whatever, which she's not even supposed to be. And a lot of the victims and other people's families are outraged at the fact that that happened. And she's on her way to some sort of pardon, which could potentially absolve Trump. The thing is, and this is what I find sad about it, I already feel like the energy around this is dying. I know that there are a lot of people who are very interested in the story. We get temporary flashes of certain pieces of release and all of that, but we had the Massey Ro Khanna thing. Now we're on to the shutdown. We did the Israel security. And this is what the Trump administration was betting on. They're like, at the end of the day, we can survive this. And Trump, if there was a long Wall Street Journal piece about the whole way that this Epstein saga developed, and Bondi allegedly in the infamous meeting tells Trump, your name is in there, not you're not implicated in any wrongdoing or whatever, but your name is in there. And, he kind of freaks out about it. He starts getting upset at why his supporters and others are so obsessed with Epstein. He apparently said Palm Beach was a very different time in the 90s.
He's like, don't they understand Palm Beach in the 90s was a different place? It's like, no, really.
Actually, by the way, I do kind of understand that. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I don't know. Look, we got to give credit where it's due. There are some people who are actually still beating the drum. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's put this up here on the screen. She recently says, quote, "I am not suicidal. I am one of the happiest, healthiest people you will meet. I have full faith in God and Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. With that said, if something happens to me, I ask you all to find out which foreign government or powerful people would take heinous action to stop information from coming out. Not only about this issue, but because of the truth that I have been speaking. The people understand what I'm saying." That was in direct reply to her support for the Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna amendment to release the Epstein files. What's also interesting is she actually gave an interview to the New York Times. And what she discussed is that the White House put immense pressure on her not to vote for that Massie and Ro Khanna amendment. She actually apparently told them, or at least according to her, she said, "I don't work for you. I was elected by the people of Georgia, and you don't get to tell me what to do." And apparently Trump himself and others are furious with her for continuing to pour gas on the fire. It is amazing how he has effectively convinced so many of these people that it's all, quote, an Epstein hoax and anti-Trump bullshit. It's, again, it's very difficult to withstand, especially from Kash Patel. We played recently some of his more recent testimony around this where he's like, oh, he absolutely committed suicide. I've reviewed the files, but it's not like I can show them to you. So I don't know where else we can go from here. Hopefully we'll continue to get more reporting, more email release and all of that. But notwithstanding some serious government action from the House and oversight stuff, which I'm not putting aside, it definitely still could happen. Yeah. This kind of seems like the end of the road, which is really unfortunate.
I'm not sure I'm ready to say that yet. One note, I'll come back to that in a minute. One note on MTG is AIPAC is looking to fund a challenger to her. So, and not just over Epstein, I think more directly over her criticism of AIPAC, criticism of the, Israel first position of this administration, calling it a genocide, et cetera. And, she has been, Massie will take a stand in terms of principled free speech things, but she has been the one she is the only Republican who has said this is a genocide. She has been the most active. And, they know they have a problem in the Republican base with young Republicans in particular, and that what starts as one with Marjorie Taylor Greene could easily grow to a handful and then go from there if they see that she's able to, withstand this challenge and get a lot of attention and publicity, by the way, by being the sole Republican voice on this issue. So AIPAC is freaked out about that and trying to, use their vast treasure chest to be able to fund a primary challenge against her. So that's something to keep an eye on. What was the other piece we were talking about? I said I was going to
whether this is the end of the road.
Whether this is the end of the road. So I think one of the reasons why Trump will be very concerned if Democrats do take back the House, which is certainly possible in the midterms, and obviously I say he's very concerned because he's doing this whole gerrymandering thing, he's casting down on mail-in ballots, all of that, is because then they would have the power, subpoena power, and this is an area where they would certainly focus. Not, whether they legitimately care about it or cared about it in the past or not, this is an area where they think they can draw political blood. Now, there's a possibility that they win the House and they try to subpoena these records and the federal government is just like, no. And essentially acts like they don't exist. I think Ryan raised that possibility on Friday. I think that's very possible as well. But, that continues to create a political problem for Trump if he's actively stonewalling the Democrats in Congress over specifically the Epstein files. That's going to be an issue for him. And then the other thing is that you still have Ghislaine Maxwell out there looking for her pardon. And very possible, if not likely, that some of the things that we have already come out, in particular the birthday book, may have come from her and from her associates. So if she feels like the need to up the ante or turn up the heat in terms of trying to get that pardon, you never know what else could be released, what other information could be provided to the press, et cetera. So I feel like it's potentially gone into hibernation, but I don't think that this is a problem that has been completely solved by the Trump administration, and put to bed for good.
I would hope so. And, on the subpoena power and all of that, what people don't understand, to Ryan's point, it's very possible that they just deny it, but it's going to cost. And what I mean by that is attention. legal fees. I mean, one of the things, I've actually already seen people talking about this. If the House wins, every single person who works for Trump is going to be racking up some $200,000 to $300,000 in legal bills. Every single one of them, because their asses. I mean, can you imagine if you're Doge or look, Elon will be fine, but the rest of those guys, the amount of time that they're going to be spending in transcribed interviews with the House of Oversight Committee. What did you do with the U.S. Institute of Peace? What did you do with the Social Security Administration? What did you do with it? You can't deny that forever. Like eventually, you do actually have to meet with the House and meet behind closed doors.
You'll go to prison the way that Bannon and Navarro.
Well, you won't go to prison because the DOJ won't prosecute you, but you will get a criminal referral.
This administration's not going to be there forever.
Well, I was going to say, you'll get a criminal referral, maybe with no statute of limitation, and then future you might go to prison, as you did earlier for Peter Navarro and Bannon. So yeah, it's going to be not good if you work for the administration. I think a lot of them are starting to actually recognize that. They're like, oh my God, they're like, we're going to need millions of dollars in legal defense bills just to withstand, at the lower level, because that's a traditional strategy. That's what most powers out of party do, is that they'll bring you in. I mean, how long did the Benghazi Commission last? 2.5 years? Like, and imagine, there's going to be a Doge Commission. There's going to be an Epstein Commission. There's going to be, God, I can't even remember. Iran strike, Venezuela. I mean, all of these things.
ICE abuses, all of that.
Oh my God, ICE, National Guard. It will never end. If the Democrats win the Senate, good luck. I mean, shutdowns are going to be ad nauseum till the end of time, which I don't think you could rule it out. I don't think it's very likely right now. But the House itself, probably a lock. Just to demonstrate what the difference in our politics will be. Famously, Obama and Clinton both wrote about what it was like to experience whenever you were both in power, but having to deal with like an opposition type Congress, which would constantly do this. And they said it just sucked the lifeblood, out of your White House. And that's what Trump himself wants to avoid. Even with extraordinary power and all of that, you have to play some ball, at the end of the day with the opposition party, especially if they control the House of Representatives, and then the number of resolutions and other things that are all going to go through. So all of that to say is you're right. And we could potentially see something, but it might take a while before it all materializes. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.